Hey everybody, I'm Mike. This is Budget Guns and Gear Reviews, and you are watching The Right of the People, where we use the first to defend the second every Friday night at 11:30 p.m. Eastern. So uncover your keyboards, fire up your fingers, and come join the conversation. Hey everybody, I'm Mike. This is Budget Guns and Gear Reviews, and you are watching The Right of the People. It is Friday, May 8th, 2020, and I'm glad to see you guys here. Pardon me. See, that's what I get. Amateur hour here, drinking carbonated beverages before I start trying to talk to people. Shame. Shame, shame. Speaking of talking to people, we got a couple people on the panel so far. Maybe a couple more will hop in, but first off, back for more Glutton for Punishment. We got Glimtech Arms. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing just fine, sir. Hopefully you are doing well as also.
Oh yeah. Can't complain, and if I did, nobody'd care. Rich, how are you, sir?
Not too bad. How's yourself?
Cannot complain, as I said. This past weekend, for those that didn't catch me going live a little earlier in the week to test my laptop, which took a crap today. So awesome on that. Got to figure out if it's truly dead and I need to return it, or if it's something that my technically inexperienced self can fix. Anyhow, those that didn't catch that live stream, I this past weekend, and who haven't, been watching my channel, this past weekend I shot my first turkey, and that was pretty dang awesome. I very much enjoyed that. I also taught my first concealed carry class on Sunday, the day after that, so that was pretty cool. And apparently I did well, because the gun store that I taught it at, Spoon CCW here in Minerva, Ohio, asked me if I wanted to come teach there on the regular, and I of course said yes. So that's pretty awesome. Matter of fact, I kind of finalized that today, so I'll be adding some classes to their schedule and letting everybody know when and where they can come take those. Come hang out with me and get your concealed carry license, right? In Ohio. So, what have you guys been up to?
Not much of anything, really. Kind of hard to do anything when your wife is working overtime every week, at least 15 hours overtime on top of her normal 40.
Ouch.
And I'm relying on her to get anywhere, so that's stuck at home. Basically what the government wants you to do anyway, right? But but if I could get out, I would. Let's put it that way. I'm pretty much stuck here for most of the time.
How are things down there in the land of cacti?
Hot, dry, windy.
So it's Friday, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, yeah. it's a regular day in the hood.
Awesome.
Other than that, not a whole lot.
What's that, sir?
So not a whole lot. Just pretty much, same old, same old.
Hey, man, better same old than oh my god.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like that line from one of the Jurassic Park movies. It starts out with ooh, ah, and then there's running and screaming.
Yep, exactly.
Yep, pretty much.
That's kind of how 2020 started. It's ooh, ah, a whole new year, yay, and now it's bleh. Like I said, as a matter of fact, I said something about that to my wife today. 2020, we got freaking coronavirus, aliens are real, murder hornets. What the hell's next? The velociraptors break loose?
Yeah, be a T-Rex walking down.
That's next week.
Yeah, next week there will be a T-Rex walking down downtown LA.
Well, it was freaking snowing in Northeast Ohio today in May.
It was snowing in West Virginia too, not where I live, but my wife's one friend, he's a trucker, and he was over in Morgantown, and he was putting up pictures on Facebook where it would look like a blizzard coming down over there.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. As I said, in June, Velociraptors. Watch. Okay, we got out in the chat. Ryan is there. Hello. Glimtech's pulling double duty. Blitz is out there. G23, Seven Wonders, Chris Fulmer. Let's see who else is out there. Rich is out there as well. Defense Dad's in the house. Ozzy Osbourne barking at the moon. Who else? Vandalistica is out there. How you doing? I hope I didn't miss Seven, but Seven Wonders is out there as well. So glad to see all you folks out there. Bo Weevil. He says 2020 is still better than the snare drum on St. Anger. Yeah, so is a colonoscopy. That entire album was horrific, and it's the album which shall not be named. It needs to be forgotten completely, cast into the memory hole, and plunged into fiery depths.
Yes. Curse you, Bo Weevil, for bringing that up, because I had forgotten all about that album.
Yes. Thanks. So, yeah. So, no, not only do we have Murder Hornets, we have Bo Weevil bringing up St. Anger. God.
Where's the band button at?
I can't do that. Bo Weevil happens to be my buddy, Two Bobs, and he lets me go out and shoot at his range. So, matter of fact, it was his place where I went and shot the turkey. So, ixnay with the anbay.
Oh, damn. Take all my fun away. But wait a second. I didn't get to go shoot a turkey. I don't shoot in his range.
We got Kingpin in the house. How you doing, sir?
Alrighty. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I'm still having some type of technical issues with my computer. I was saying thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, no problem, man. Always welcome, brother. Vandalistica says all Metallica is Dookie. Fight me. Dude, you're in frickin' Australia. You're pretty safe. So, yeah, there's that. Say whatever you want. Go ahead.
Now, here's a scary thought. Is the Rona starting to infect computers? You're having technical difficulties with your new computer. Kingpin's having technical difficulties with his computer. Other people were having difficulties earlier during Night Strike show with their computers. Is it starting to infect our electronics now?
Yeah.
It's the snow.
Maybe some hacker made the coronavirus into a virus. That's next. Coronavirus infects computers.
I think it's the
Velociraptors.
I think it's the 5G angle where they're all putting 5G into our computers so they can turn it on and sick us with the Rona.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Just wanted to make sure sound was coming through because I'm back to using the old laptop. Hopefully I put a new outro together, so hopefully that won't bog down at the end of this like it usually does, and we'll see. So we got a few things to talk about this week. Got some but we also have some pretty good to talk about. And let's go into it right off the bat. First up is this piece from Dave Workman in Ammoland. Once again, SCOTUS kicks 2A can down the road. But why? For those of you who weren't paying attention last week, the Supreme Court decided to moot the NYSRPA case, but the glimmer of hope was that they had 10, count them 10, Supreme Court cases, coming up in conference the following Monday. Well, they decided not to hear any of those, but they haven't dismissed them. So I guess what I mean is they kind of delayed granting cert. They did not grant cert to them yet, but they didn't say, yeah, kick your asses back down to the lower courts. We're not going to touch you. They're still kind of in limbo. They got kind of pushed off to the next conference. So, yeah, let's read about this. USA, MLN.com. Once again, the U.S. Supreme Court has essentially kicked the proverbial can down the road, not accepting while not rejecting any of 10 potential Second Amendment cases that were part of the May 4th order list of cases submitted for possible acceptance. Since the June 2010 decision, 5-4, in McDonald v. City of Chicago, the High Court has not issued a ruling on the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. And the question remains, why not? There have been several good cases presented to the court for review over the past decade. Several more are now waiting in the wings. 10 cases, many of which deal with the issue of bearing arms outside the home, were bypassed by the court, meaning they automatically go to another calendar for consideration on the next Supreme Court conference day later this month, which I think is on the 14th, which happens to be my birthday, and that would be absolutely wonderful if they gave me a birthday present of accepting one or more of these cases. So, Supreme Court justices, if you're listening, even Ruth Bader Ginsburg from Beyond the Grave, or Bernie's house, wherever the hell they've got you stashed, do me a solid. Anyhow, 3 cases are supported by the National Rifle Association. 5 cases, including one not on Monday's list for consideration, but evidently of enough interest that the court has asked for a response in Rodriguez v. City of San Jose, involve the Second Amendment Foundation. One of those cases even lists SAF's sister organization, the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms, as a plaintiff. Those cases were discussed by AmmoLand, and it gives a linky link for it. It is not as though nobody is interested. Writing at the National Review Online, frequent AmmoLand news contributor Lawrence G. Keene, Senior Vice President and General Counsel at the National Shooting Sports Foundation, declared a Second Amendment day of reckoning may be dawning. A few paragraphs later, Keene acknowledges the court has shied away from taking challenges to states' attempts to limit the right to keep and bear arms. The NRA's Institute for Legislative Action published an online lengthy discussion that reflects no small frustration that the Supreme Court has, as once observed by Associate Justice Clarence Thomas in a dissent regarding the court's refusal to hear the case of Peruta v. California 3 years ago. At that time, Justice Thomas observed that the court's continued avoidance of a gun rights case reflects a distressing trend, their treatment of the Second Amendment as a disfavored right. Even Mother Jones, a publication that has not been friendly to the Second Amendment, observed in the aftermath of the court's ruling to moot the case of New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus City of New York, for gun control groups like Everytown for Gun Safety and the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence, the court's punting of the issue is a victory. For now. The article noted that one case up for court consideration is Gold v. O'Leary, a lawsuit that challenges Massachusetts' concealed carry licensing system. If that case, or another one similar to it, does get picked up by the Supreme Court, Mother Jones writer Matt Cohen observed, it could be the Second Amendment doomsday scenario that gun control advocates fear and gun rights activists are hoping for. Sooner or later, the Supreme Court must hand down another Second Amendment ruling, regardless the potentially unpleasant, if not earth-shattering, consequences for states such as New Jersey, New York, Maryland, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and California that have long treated Second Amendment rights as government-regulated privileges. Rights are rights, period. And you shouldn't need to provide a good reason to the government, nor should one be forced to wait weeks, and in some cases months, to exercise those rights, whether they are freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, and the press, or to keep and bear arms. Rights are not limited to the interior of one's home or the confines of one's private property. Rights go with you across city, county, and state lines. Writing in the National Review on May 1st, Trevor Burrus observed, the court needs to take a Second Amendment case soon, whether it's one of these cases or another. In the 10 years since the court took a Second Amendment case, the lower courts have floundered to figure out what the decisions in Heller and McDonald mean. Today, according to the most recent estimate by the Crime Prevention Research Center, more than 18.6 million citizens are licensed to carry. When that many people are presumably carrying firearms all or at least part of the time, questions about the right to bear arms are of intense public interest. For the court to dodge this bullet, no pun intended, repeatedly suggests at least some justices do not want such questions to be answered definitively and finally. The court has addressed equally thorny issues regarding rights. It is time again, say gun rights activists, for the court to settle questions about the Second Amendment, and do it sooner than later. And I have to say, I agree with Mr. Workman. it's time to settle this question, and it's time to settle this once and for all. My preference would be for them to take up one of the shall issue versus may issue cases, or the right to buy handguns across interstate lines. But I think the best for the cause, particularly for people like Kingpin, who is stuck in one of the states affected by these cases, I think it would be best to take the shall issue versus may issue cases. I hope they do. I hope they're waiting looking for a case that's better than and has a more broad applicability than the NYSRPA case did. Being that was based on a law enacted in one city that had been rendered moot because they changed the law. I would hope that they turn that one down because of that, and they're deciding which one of these cases has the best applicability nationwide. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's not what they're doing, but I sure hope it is. What do you guys think on this?
I agree with the shall issue, may issue. I think that's an interesting argument that they could listen to that could make major changes. And like you said, states like mine, but plenty of other states. And I think you get the most victory out of that. Like if they win the case and it goes positive for our way, I think that comes with the most amount of benefits.
Okay. I'll throw a clinker into that one. I agree with the shall issue, may issue to a point. However, I think the ability to sell handguns across state lines would be a much better and much more positive aspect of it, because that would take away California's list of guns. That would take away Illinois' list of guns that you can't buy, you can't have, because it's on their quote unquote approved or disapproved list. It doesn't matter because you can go out to another state and buy that. So it's going to eliminate all that crap. So I would think in the long run, that one might show a little bit more benefit to the lockdown communist states, even though shall issue, may issue.
That's an interesting point.
Now that you laid it out like that, I definitely see your argument. That does make a lot of sense.
That's an interesting point, but I also think that a may issue versus shall issue case, being ruled that shall issue should be the law of the land, that people have the right to carry outside their home, I think that has even broader implications than that. Consider reciprocity. We have places that don't recognize other states' rights to other states' permits. Maybe that the Supreme Court stating that the right to keep and bear arms extends outside the home to everybody could be an argument used to get rid of these non-reciprocal states. To force national reciprocity. I was just thinking that.
Agreed.
But, maybe I'm wrong there. Maybe that.
But
maybe I'm stretching.
No, there's a simpler solution to the whole problem too.
Well, yeah.
It just means you have to take both of them at the minimum. Solve the problem.
Yeah, I would say both cases have equal merit.
Hey, I'm hoping for a first down, not a touchdown here.
Yeah, both cases should be brought up. You guys have done a pretty good job already with shall issue versus may issue, but there's an aspect of the not selling firearms across state lines that hasn't been brought up yet. It's an unconstitutional application of the Commerce Clause, is why you can't buy firearms across state lines. Absolutely. Congress decided it because parts have to come from all over the place, that they can regulate where firearms can and can't be sold. That's not what the Commerce Clause states or what the purpose of it is, but that's what they stated their reasoning for limiting handgun sales across state lines is. The purpose of the Commerce Clause is for them to keep commerce flowing between states, not to restrict it. What they've done is exactly what the founders wanted that clause to prevent from happening.
Interesting.
And that, if that gets overturned, it could be a basis for them trying to do this with other products. There was a case not that long ago where people in one state were taking bread into another state and selling it, and the courts told them that they can't do that because it violates the Commerce Clause.
They were taking what?
Bread. And they were selling.
So if I make bread here in Ohio, I couldn't take it across the border to Pennsylvania and sell it.
According to this court ruling, I forget from how long ago it was, but yeah, that according to that court ruling, you could not do that.
Crazy.
Because it's a violation of the Commerce Clause in that court's ruling. It was one of the federal courts. It wasn't the Supreme Court, but one of the federal courts ruled that years ago. And that's why you get like all these local bread companies selling to different areas. And it's so convoluted, it's ridiculous. And there's a lot of these, if you look through history, cases where the Commerce Clause has been inappropriately applied. And that case with the selling of handguns across state borders could overturn all of that in theory.
Well, it might.
I
hadn't thought of the implications beyond the immediate Second Amendment stuff. Interesting. So that could attack the
much larger implication.
The entire way that they apply the Interstate Commerce Clause. Yeah. Interesting. So it'll be it'll damn sure be something to watch to see how this unfolds, if it unfolds, or if they do what a lot of people are afraid they're going to do and just let these cases die on the vine. That would be truly, truly horrible. Let me get back out here. Let's see, who do we got? Talking music.
Yeah, the only thing I see them not dying on the vine is because 4 of the judges chimed in on that last dissent, and that's what they need to have take a case.
Yeah.
They need four judges to say so. Honestly, I just looking at what's going on now with Ginsburg, I think the reason why they punted this temporarily was because of her and her health, and
they want to see
what
if
they're
she's
looking
last?
at down the line and what's going to happen. Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't wish ill on anyone simply because of ideology. I don't wish ill on Justice Ginsburg, but I do wish she would retire. I think that she's had a good long run, a very distinguished career, and ideology aside, you're working yourself to death on this. Sit back, relax, and enjoy some retirement.
I don't know. I'll take a little bit of a different angle on it. I do agree. I don't want her to get any sicker than she is. I'm not wishing ill on her at all, but I think it's time that she go ahead and wrap it up and leave this world. She's doing more harm than she is good, especially in the position of power she has.
Well, I wasn't going to go with come on, old lady, shrivel up and die.
No, I didn't mean any malice behind it. Like, I want her to naturally live, but if she naturally died tomorrow, that would be a good thing. I don't want her to feel pain or not. I'm not a leftist, so I don't want any negative thing to happen for her, but to be better off for all society, probably be better if she wasn't on this planet.
And that boils down to the another can of worms and another argument of term limits on why no position should be a lifetime appointed position for any reason. You want to do it for 8 years, you want to do it for 10 years, that's fine. Lifetimes, no.
Yeah.
There's no reason for that.
Well, up until Ginsburg, anytime one would get a terminal illness, they would step aside. She's just so damn stubborn that she won't realize that she's incapable of doing the job. Her political bias is so strong that she cannot contemplate not being there to offset what she thinks is the wrong side. That's basically what this boils down to with her.
Yeah. Yeah. We got Jefferson Martial Arts joining out there in the chat. Welcome, sir. We also got Mystic Guns popping in to see us. Thank you, thank you. Poor Conservative is in there as well. I don't know if I mentioned him earlier. Let's see. What are they talking about out there in the chat? We got... let's see. G23 says, my preference would be that they rule that all infringements are illegal and return to the true 2A. Well, yeah, but again, I'm hoping for, a first down, not a Hail Mary pass to the end zone to win the entire Super Bowl. You're more likely to get 10 yards at a time than you are the whole 100, right? Let's see. Jefferson Martial Arts says, I know Colorado's trying to start to crack down on firearms. Yeah, they've been doing that for a minute. It's unfortunate. They are getting worse, I would imagine. Gun-toting pacifist, and welcome to the show, by the way. I'm still pissed that reciprocity never got brought to a vote when it got to the Senate. Yeah, me too. I wish they had moved on that when they could, but for some reason chose not to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but they could only do it back when they first had control. Well, no, they did. They never had 60 votes.
Yeah,
so
that's the
they
problem.
couldn't have got it to anyway.
Squibload's listening in before calling it a night. American Gun Chicks joined the house. Welcome.
Well,
Glad to see you out there in the show.
Yeah, G23 brought up a good point on Ginsburg, but there's a problem with it. He said they can remove her because of medical conditions. Yes, they could in theory do that, but the problem is it would have to start in the House, and there's no way the House as it sits right now is going to do so.
Yeah. Hey, Gun Chick, if you want a link, shoot me an email at budgetgunsandgear@gmail.com. I'll send you one. Let's see. So, there we have that. Let's go ahead and move on to the next topic. This is another piece in Amaland. This one by David Codria. Said, supposed pro-gun bill an intolerable act endangering Second Amendment activists. For those of you who aren't familiar with history, the intolerable acts were one of the bases for the revolution here in the USA. This was posted on May 7, 2020. A below-the-radar piece posted Tuesday on Amaland lauds a bill promising to increase gun possession penalties against criminals as a preferred solution to violence. It further asserts doing that will reduce receptivity to further Second Amendment infringements. There was a law mandating penalties, but a 2015 Supreme Court ruling declared parts of it unconstitutionally vague. A pair of Second Amendment champions, Senator Tom Cotton, Republican, Arkansas, and Representative Dave Kustoff, Republican, Tennessee, have introduced legislation called the Restoring the Armed Career Criminal Act, known as H.R. 2837 and Senate 1541, to address that ruling, the article gushes. According to releases from Senator Cotton's and Representative Kustoff's offices, they do this by dispensing with the old definitions of violent felony and serious drug offense and going with a single serious felony that is defined as any offense that lands a person with a potential sentence of at least 10 years in prison. As if to prove the case, including a resulting diminished public appetite for citizen disarmament, the article lauds Project Exile as a successful strategy that can reduce the number of propaganda weapons available to those who seek to take our rights away. Here's what's not being considered. Project Exile was condemned by those groups and individuals who put the Bill of Rights first, and for the record, it didn't work anywhere near as well as the NRA's louder law enforcement voice tells us it did, nor did it reduce the push for more gun control. The mantra to enforce existing gun laws is the exact wrong thing to be asking for, because it feeds the lie that such edicts work. Calling for that in the face of shall not be infringed is tantamount to be demanding that usurpers with no legitimate authority enforce existing intolerable acts. We know that anyone who can't be trusted with a gun can't be trusted without a custodian. It's not just a saying, it's true. Not that the law keeps anyone determined to get a gun from doing so, as weekend homicide stats from Chicago or Baltimore continually remind us. And remember that mass killings that racked up the highest death tolls, 9/11, the Oklahoma City bombing, and the Happy Land Dance Club fire, were all committed without guns. Of relevance, author Robert J. Kukla made an astute observation in his 1973 classic Gun Control, equating the release of the chronically violent from prison with opening the cage of a man-eating tiger and expecting a different result. Here's what's being missed most of all. The bill, if enacted, will add acts of principled civil disobedience into the mix. Pay attention to this, folks, because I've heard a lot of us. I've said it myself, and I've seen a lot of this out in the chats at different times. You know, I won't comply, will not comply, come and take them, etc., etc. Pay attention to this, because Mr. Kodria has a point. Per U.S. Code, possession of a firearm or ammunition by a prohibited person is punishable by up to 10 years imprisonment. A man can find himself prohibited for a lot of reasons, including a conviction for possessing a bump stock the government says you can't have, soon to be a semi-auto if the antis get their way, or even for a domestic violence misdemeanor like tearing a pocket or throwing keys. Add to that due process denying red flag laws. Remember, red flag laws can make you a prohibited person without you even knowing it, which would mean you are then subject to up to 10 years imprisonment, which would then add this extra time on there from this bill. Decide you won't give up your guns for those reasons, and now these Second Amendment champions propose tacking another 15 years on if you're caught? You'll be lumped in with the worst of the worst? But wait, surely only violent felons will be affected, and prosecutors and judges will have discretion, right? Disregarding for a moment this gross violation of the principles of federalism and the naivete of trusting anti-gun federal prosecutors and judges to differentiate between offenders in an era where official government bodies have declared the NRA a terrorist organization, the violent felon language is what this new bill has done away with. By defining serious felony solely based on the potential term of imprisonment, the bill would address the vagueness issue and remove any discretion or doubt about which offenses qualify. And they emphasize they mean any offense. Some of us will not comply with orders to disarm. Some of us realize that when the door to a peaceful resolution is slammed in our faces by tyrants, the choice is to obey or to refuse to surrender our rights. This bill is an abomination. Anyone endorsing it is setting the enforcement hounds loose on all those who will not disarm. They are supporting and enabling the agents of tyranny to bend resistors to their will or destroy them. And that brings us to the last point. Anyone who thinks the gun grabbers are really doing this because of crime has not been paying attention to history. But they'll be more than happy to take the pound of flesh being offered to them gratis. They'll move on to their next objective on the road to a monopoly of violence now that they no longer have to struggle with an obstacle that's been preemptively surrendered in the name of law and order over liberty. Sorry, but I will not politely urge my representative and senators to support the Restore the Armed Career Criminal Act. I'll be sending my reps the link to this post and telling them in no uncertain terms that to do so will be the act of a gun grabber, whether intentional or not. Don't enforce existing laws. Repeal the damn things. I think Mr. Kodry is spot on. You know, this will turn. I mean, think about it. How many of you had a bump stock and didn't get rid of it? Don't admit it. Don't post it out there in the chat. Think about it. How many know somebody who had a bump stock, didn't get rid of it? That's punishable by up to 10 years. So if you get caught with one, not only is it 10 years, it's an automatic 15 because of this act. So pay attention, folks. Don't you have to think about the unintended consequences, or well, maybe they are intended consequences of pieces of legislation like this, and supporting them or opposing them. What do you guys think? Do you think he is out of his gourd, or do you think he has a good point?
I think he's got a pretty decent point. My biggest problem with the red flag laws, aside from the law itself, but like conversation about it and people's opinions about it, is there's a lot of so-called pro Second Amendment, pro Constitution people out there that say that the red flag laws are bad just because they're written bad. Like the as written is a term that I heard a million times about the red flag laws, and that's not acceptable. That's not acceptable at all. And those are people that are quote unquote on our side. So as long as we've got people that think, well, if it was written just a little bit differently, it'd be fine, we're going to have problems.
Yeah, I don't think it matters how it's written. The fact that they're even writing these laws in any form is not a good thing. And if they're writing a law that's going to just make it even worse than what it already is, that's absurd. And I don't know what the hell we're going to do about it, but it's bad. It's very, very bad.
Well, hopefully this law, which on the surface, hey, let's make sure we hammer criminals, you know, because I can't think of anybody that other than criminals and their families who don't want criminals to face the full penalty and wrath of the law. Get that? I mean, hey, I'm a professional. Punish the criminals, you know? Well, they're there as punishment, not for punishment, but that's a whole philosophical discussion we can have another time. But anyhow, I work in corrections. So if anybody is pro punish the criminals, it's me. I like having a job. And it's a damn good one too. But you got to look past that. You got to look past the surface and really think about things before you make a decision on it. Don't just skim the headlines, as it were. You have to read the article. So I guess that's maybe the lesson to be learned from this, is always dig deeper. Never take something at face value. Never take something on the surface. Look at what's below and think about the possible implications. Looks like we got G23 heading out. It says, night, y'all. Have to get prepared for tomorrow. Check out my live stream tomorrow evening at 3 p.m. Pacific and 6 p.m. Eastern. I'll have a very special guest on my show. So, yeah, go ahead. Check out G23 stuff, guys. It's G23 here on YouTube. So, check it out tomorrow, folks. So, we had a couple Debbie Downer type stories here. Time to move on to something a little more positive. You know, we all are aware of what's going on with this coronavirus garbage. We're all aware that there's this pandemic, there's this mass panic, there's a shortage of personal protective equipment. You know, we know that Remington offered to devote some of their manufacturing capacity to producing PPE and whatnot, and New York's governor said no. Well, the rest of the gun manufacturers are stepping up behind the plate as well. Going out to the chat, let's see. Gunchick says, I think if anyone gets 10 years for having a bump stock, patriots need to come together to make the Richmond March and the Bundy Ranch look like a picnic. I can't say I disagree, because I think that that's an unconstitutional overreach of regulatory power by the feds, particularly when you're talking about an unelected appointed bureaucracy that de facto rewrote law without actually passing legislation. So yeah, and they've even admitted that they can't do it. So yeah, that needs to be protested hard. It should have already been being protested as harshly as we possibly can. But
that protest needs to last for days and days and days.
Yeah.
It can't be a one-day protest and go home.
Yeah, and there needs to be almost. I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's just bump stocks," but really, it's the overreach that we need to be protesting. It's the seizure of power by the executive branch that we needed to be protesting. Damn near come to civil unrest over. But I digress. Back to some better news. This is from Fox News. U.S. gun manufacturers join coronavirus fight by reproducing PPE. This is by Holly McKay. And it was posted, well, it doesn't say when it was posted. Doggone it. I hate that. Anyhow, while it's something of a war without weapons, leading gun manufacturers across the country are stepping up to aid the fight against the spread of coronavirus. Similarly to that of car manufacturers that have jumped to make the medical equipment and alcohol distilleries that have opted to make hand sanitizer, U.S. weapons plants have also turned their production plants to target areas in need of aid, namely personal protection equipment, PPE. Sig Sauer, Ruger, Smith & Wesson, and Keltec are among the companies in the firearm industry who have made efforts to fight COVID-19 by making and or supplying PPE. The donations have been made to first responders such as police, fire, and EMTs, but also to healthcare professionals in their local hospitals. Eric Poole, editor-in-chief of Guns and Ammo magazine, told Fox News. The response has been growing among companies as they learn how they can shift their capabilities. Taurus, for example, which recently moved its U.S. manufacturing facility to Bainbridge, Georgia, has extended its domestic efforts by ordering PPE from the company's manufacturing facilities in Brazil, and the likes of Sig Sauer has donated nearly 15,000 KN95 masks to over 80 different local law enforcement, EMS, fire department, and medical facilities in New Hampshire, Oregon, and Arkansas. As the events surrounding the COVID-19 began to progress, it was clear to us very early on that we were going to need to procure a significant amount of PPE to ensure the health and safety of our employees, said Tom Taylor, Chief Marketing Officer and Executive Vice President at Sig Sauer. In the process of preparing our workforce, we were also able to secure enough masks so that we could contribute PPE within the communities where our facilities operate and our employees live, which allowed us to have the greatest possible impact. Taylor noted that the need for this type of PPE, such as face masks, was something entirely new for the company. The protective equipment we typically used prior to this was for hearing and eye protection in our factories and due to the fact that we test fire products in our test ranges or at our training, he explained. But because our manufacturing processes utilize some of the most advanced technology in the world, including some of the latest robotics and computer-aided design and prototyping, most of the PPE we typically use is related to maintenance and hazardous material abatement. Furthermore, Sig Sauer's Oregon-based electro-optics division has been 3D printing plastic face shields to donate to Medical Teams International. The non-governmental organization outfits doctors and nurses on mobile coronavirus testing vans in the greater metro area of Portland. The company also said that it would be giving away these face shields to local healthcare workers and hospitals spanning Oregon, Arkansas, and New Hampshire in the weeks to come. Furthermore, Smith & Wesson has donated over 5,000 face shields and 12,000 pairs of eye protection to support frontline professionals across the nation. Ordinarily, our PPE is primarily focused on hearing and eye protection for use in our manufacturing facilities. Because we have an inventory of eye protection, safety glasses, we were able to send 12,000 pairs to frontline professionals across the nation, noted Elizabeth Sharp, VP of Investor Relations at American Outdoor Brands Corporation, the parent company for Smith & Wesson. In addition, our unique manufacturing capability and expertise in the form of innovative engineers, 3D printers, and special materials provided us with the opportunity to repurpose a portion of those resources to design and build face shields. Sharp said that they are now producing 1,000 of these shields per day for use by employees, the medical community, and first responders across several states, underscoring that within the first few days of the outbreak early last month, the engineering team at Smith & Wesson had designed a face shield utilizing 3D printers and readily available materials and commenced building. And in an effort to support local communities, Ruger donated resources to hospitals, nursing homes, police, fire, and other first responder departments, including 6,500 surgical masks, 700 Tyvek suits, and over 200 N95 masks, almost 5,000 safety glasses, and 200 shoe coverings. Additionally, Ruger has redeployed some of its manufacturing resources and pivoted production to assist with the shortage of certain medical supplies. Specifically, Ruger has built and delivered over 3,000 face shields to over 60 local hospitals and first responders in 5 states, continued Vice President of Marketing Rob Workmeister. We have been mindful of the shortages in the medical community and are doing our part to support local hospitals and first responders by both making and donating supplies on hand, while also ensuring that we have sufficient protective equipment for our employees. Meanwhile, as the crisis in New York was reaching its crescendo and state leaders voiced concerns of dire bed and ventilator shortage, manufacturer Remington Arms offered almost 1 million square feet of vacant space in its upstate plant to Governor Andrew Cuomo. The company also tried to develop hospital supplies such as surgical masks, bed, and ventilators, which at the time Cuomo publicly lamented that the state possessed on 7,000 and would require 30,000 to meet demand. The Remington plant in Ilion now has approximately 1 million square feet of unused and available manufacturing space, said CEO Ken Darcy in a March 23rd letter to Cuomo and President Donald Trump, according to the Journal. We would be honored to donate our facility to the production of ventilators, surgical masks, hospital beds, or any other products mission critical to the war on the coronavirus. Smaller companies with ties to the industry have also partaken in the challenge. For one, Alaska-based Triject Manufacturing, known for its specialized 3D printing of gun parts, last month turned its attention to instead composing thin plastic test swabs and clear plastic face shields for medical personnel. Yeah, what this story isn't mentioning is that Cuomo told Remington to stuff it in their ear, and no, we don't need your help. Indeed, as with any modern manufacturing company, 3D printing is critical in the gun industry for rapid prototyping, testing, and product development has proven to play a part in the pandemic. For the likes of Kel-Tech's Florida plant, Ruger's New Hampshire facility, and Sig Sauer's optics manufacturing site in Oregon, it was considered easy to reconfigure the 3D printers typically used for making firearm-related products and shift to production of certain masks and face shields, Poole pointed out. Gun owners generally consider themselves among the most patriotic of Americans, as do most of the companies within the firearm industry, he added. When the COVID-19 pandemic subsides, these gun owners will remember what companies made an effort to support their fellow Americans in this time of need. Sir, I think you're exactly right. We will remember that. And I hope the voters in New York remember who refused their help. What do you guys think? Is this awesome or what?
Yeah, I mean,
The memory will save the day.
Yeah.
You know, if we remember the good and the bad, that will help us change things for the good and the bad in the future.
Yeah, it's definitely good, a good publicity for them. I don't know. I doubt if they're going to actively try and use that as publicity, but, you know, any publicity is good publicity, right? And if it's good publicity, the better it is. So them going out there and doing this, it's definitely going to help their cause. And I don't see how it could possibly hurt. You know what I mean? They're helping people and whatnot. And, and Cuomo, his refusing Remington's help just shows how much he was politicizing this from the very start. As soon as he shut down the Remington plant to be able to manufacture firearms in that plant, and he started about needing respirators, Remington was right there. Boom, we'll make respirators for you. And he turned them down. I mean, it wasn't even a week after he shut down the Remington plant that he started whining and crying about not having enough ventilators, which, by the way, was proven to be false. And Remington volunteered to make them more, and he turned them down. So, if anything, like you were saying, this is going to look bad on Cuomo, not Remington. So I don't know how it's going to be hard for anybody to spin this badly to make the firearms companies that got involved in stood up and raised their hand saying, "We'll help," look bad.
Yeah. Sorry, I kind of got sidetracked looking at something. Yeah, you know, my hope, again, my hope with this is that Cuomo gets it handed to him at the next election because he refused to help. If I were his opponent, you can absolutely bet that I'd be beating that drum to death, you know, until it wouldn't sound anymore about how he's refusing help during this crisis, just simply out of political ideology. You know, I don't care if it was a detestable company that I absolutely hated that manufactured a product with which I completely, totally, and utterly disagreed. If I shut them down maliciously out of spite because I hated them, and they still wanted to step up to the plate and help in a crisis like this, the only answer you can give is yes. But no, not him. Not him.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, Remington had their full ability of their manufacturing center just sitting there doing nothing because he shut them down and he turned them down. They could have been produced, if I remember right from what the spokesman from Remington said, 10 to 20 respirators per day in addition to other supplies, and he told them no. That's ridiculous.
Gunchick said that Dan Crenshaw just wrote her that he's defending the TAPS Act, saying it has nothing to do with firearms whatsoever. Any chance we're misinformed on this act? I'm not super familiar. No, that's okay. You know, as I tell everybody, this show is a conversation, you know, and conversations go two ways, not just one way. No, it's all right. It's all right. Don't worry about it. I look for input from the audience anyway. So let's see if I can bring this up into. Here we go.
As I said, that TAP Act has a lot of questionable things in it.
This is just a summary of it for those not familiar with it. H.R. 838, the Threat Assessment, Prevention, and Safety TAPS Act. Whether it's a shooting, stabbing, weaponized vehicle, or bombing, mass casualty events are occurring too often. These horrific tragedies are impacting our nation indiscriminately. Americans want a solution. I believe we found one. For decades, a process to identify, investigate, assess, and mitigate threats has been in place to counter targeted violence. Pioneered by the U.S. Secret Service, behavioral threat assessment and management has proven successful in protecting our president and foreign dignitaries. If this process works to protect the president, elected officials, foreign dignitaries, and even celebrities, why aren't we using it to protect our children and local communities? The TAPS Act will standardize and provide a behavioral threat assessment and management process across the federal government, will provide states the training, resources, and support needed to stand up community-based, multidisciplinary behavioral threat assessment and management units, recognizes that behavioral threat assessment and management processes must become part of the culture and fabric of contemporary law enforcement, urges that this is a matter of national security. If we act now and work together, we can save lives. Let's see how it works. A task force made up of experts in behavioral threat assessment and management creates recommendations for a national strategy for preventing targeted violence through a behavioral threat assessment and management. Must include school safety program, operational training program, unit support, mental health service, professional assessment. Congress and the Department of Homeland Security review recommendations from the task force. State participation in this process is voluntary. Grant money will be made available to states who choose to receive training and support. Manage the threat before an attack occurs. By the time the first shot is fired, it's too late. We have failed. On the surface, and again, this goes back to what I was talking about earlier. On the surface, doesn't sound like it has anything to do with guns. Guns aren't mentioned, other than, you know, shooting, etc., etc. But that's on the surface. What's beneath this? Because this is sounding to me like red flag stuff. It's based on what someone might do, not what they have done. And in this country, we don't persecute someone based on what they might do. We prosecute based on what they have done. So, what do you think is going to happen if they find someone suspect under this TAPS Act? Is that person going to become a prohibited person? I would imagine so. So while on the surface it may not have anything directly to do with guns, look underneath. Take it a step further. Project out what may or may not happen. I think it does. I don't know. Is that a stretch? Or is that how government simply works?
It's just how government works. It might not be how Crenshaw intends it. We don't know. He went on Crowder right after he submitted this, and this was, God, this was what, a year ago? And was talking that's not how he intends it to be used. But that's the problem. He might not intend it that way, but that doesn't mean somebody isn't going to interpret it that way. He might have the best of intentions, but what's the saying? The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Absolutely right.
So I mean, it's on it, like you were saying, on the surface, it might look good, it might look kosher, but when you dig down in, they're gonna misinterpret this, and it's gonna be used to do exactly what you said. It's gonna make prohibited people that have done absolutely nothing wrong to that point.
Yeah. Again, it goes back to don't just headline serve. Don't just skim something. You have to think about what. And honestly, man, I hate to sound like I'm at work because I tell this to the kids at work all the time when they're in the middle of making some really poor decisions that can have some bad consequences on them. You have to think about the potential consequences to your actions before you act. It's the same with this. It's the same with legislation. It's the same with anything. You have to think it through. You have to project out the likely consequences and the likely results before you make that decision. And it applies to this too. So actually, you may have kind of dropped the bomb and interrupted the flow of what I had planned, but that's okay. This was a good addition. Thank you very much for putting that out there. There's some other good news in the 2A world. It's not a slam dunkaroonie, but it is another yard or two down the field. This is a piece from Breitbart by A.W.R. Hawkins from May 7th. Judge refuses to dismiss NRA challenge to Florida law barring young adults from gun purchases. Chief U.S. District Judge Mark Walker on Wednesday refused to dismiss the National Rifle Association's challenge to a Florida gun law barring firearms sales to young adults aged 18 to 20. The Tampa Bay Times reports that the office of the Florida General Attorney Ashley Moody urged Walker to dismiss the case, but he ruled instead that the case should be allowed to continue. In so doing, Walker stressed that he was not tasked with deciding whether the NRA's arguments against the gun control law were accurate. Rather, he was simply making clear that the case should be able to move on to a point where a decision can be made via a trial setting. Walker wrote, "It is important to keep in mind the narrow issue before the court at this stage of the proceedings. This court is not asked to and does not decide whether the law is constitutional. Rather, the question is whether the plaintiff's complaint contains enough facts to state a claim to relief that is plausible on its face." The state of Florida adopted a law prohibiting long gun sales to young adults aged 18 to 20 after the February 14, 2018 Parkland High School shooting. The Orlando Weekly reports that the key support for passage of the law came from Senate President Bill Galvano, Republican Bradenton. On January 17, 2020, Breitbart News reported that Galvano's Political Action Committee received hundreds of thousands of dollars in donations from Mike Bloomberg-funded Everytown for Gun Safety. The Tampa Bay Times reported a donation to Galvano's committee in the sum of $200,000, and the Florida Department of State Division of Elections shows that the Galvano received an additional $300,000 given as well. The case is National Rifle Association of America versus Swearingen, number 418 CV-00137 in the U.S. District Court of the Northern District of Florida. Man, You want to talk about quid pro quo here? Maybe that's what old Nan Nan should be investigating. But you know for full well that ain't going to happen. So that's some good news. The case can proceed. It's not going to be summarily dismissed. It looks like it's going to be heard and possibly judged on its merits. I think that's nothing but a good thing. Because that law was garbage from the beginning. If you're 18 years old and you're legally an adult, I for a long time, I've always hated the whole quasi-adult thing between 18 and 21. You know, you're old enough to go out, have a rifle shoved in your hands, and more powerful than that, fight and possibly die for your country, but you're not a full adult. Bullshit. You're either an adult or you're not. You know, and to treat people from 18 to 20 as second-class citizens is complete horse crap. If they have all the responsibilities, they should have all of the benefits as well.
Yeah, you can take that one step further if you want to go down that route. Anybody who's in junior ROTC above the age of 16 is officially a member of the Ready Reserve, and they're the first ones to get drafted if they was through the draft.
Sean Callahan, which, by the way, welcome to the show tonight, says it doesn't make sense to give a gun to an 18-year-old and have him police the world, but he can't buy a gun at home. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So this is a great thing. I think this is definitely a case to watch as it proceeds through the court system.
Yeah. And there's more. Florida. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Finish.
I was just going to say, Florida's not the only state that has these laws on the books, and the House of Representatives has been sitting on one of these bills forever. The only reason why they haven't brought it up is because they know it won't pass the Senate.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure they're waiting for another atrocity to exploit, too. Just nobody's been in school, so they can't.
Yeah, that's one thing I got to give Arizona. At least Arizona, at 18 years old, you can carry a firearm.
Good.
You can open carry one.
Yeah, you can.
You can't buy one, but you can open carry one.
Yeah, you can do that in West Virginia too, and you can get a provisional concealed carry permit that's only usable in West Virginia. They were going to make it a regular permit, but then Nevada just said, nope, if you do that, we're not going to recognize your permit anymore. So to make Nevada happy, they changed it where it was provisional and only usable in the state.
New York Outcast
what they did do also.
New York Outcast says they can only take a life with a gun for the government, not themselves or family. And that goes back to what somebody in one of the articles we read earlier said about a monopoly of violence. The government wants that monopoly for themselves, not you. They want a monopoly on anything that could possibly be seen as being self-sufficient and reducing our dependence upon them. I'm a firm believer in that the government wants the citizenry to be dependent upon government for everything, because it goes back to the golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rules. You know, if you
absolutely,
if you provide someone with everything, then you have a leverage over them. And if you're the only one that provides it, you can take it away. And if it's something like food, clothing, housing, medical care that you absolutely need, and they control your ability to have that, then they control everything you do. Which is why I believe gun control is evil. And as I've said before, gun control is never about the gun. It's always about the control. But let's go to some more good news in the 2A world. This is a piece from Ammo Land from May 7th by Dave Workman. Federal judge rules Massachusetts gun shops can open. Defeat for Governor Baker. A U.S. District Court judge in Massachusetts handed Governor Charlie Baker a defeat to Thursday, ruling from the bench that gun shops in the Commonwealth can reopen because keeping them shuttered infringes on the Second Amendment rights of citizens in a case brought by the Second Amendment Foundation and other gun rights groups, retailers, and individuals. As a result, Bay State gun stores will be open for business beginning at noon Saturday, exactly 1 month after the lawsuit was filed. According to the Boston Globe, Judge Douglas P. Woodlock noted during a 2-hour virtual hearing that he could not see a fit between goals of the emergency declared by the Commonwealth and the burdening of constitutional rights. There's no justification here, Judge Woodlock observed, according to the newspaper. SAF was joined in the lawsuit by the Firearms Policy Coalition, Commonwealth Second Amendment, Inc., Column 2A, plus 3 retailers and several private citizens. The original complaint, which can be read here and they give a link to it, was filed April 9th in U.S. District Court for the District of Massachusetts. The case is known as McCarthy v. Baker. Plaintiffs' attorneys are J. Stephen Foley of Worcester, Jason A. Guida of Saugus, and David Jensen of Beacon, New York. We're delighted at the decision by Judge Woodlock and the swiftness with which it was reached, said SAF founder and executive vice president Alan M. Gottlieb in a prepared statement. Constitutional rights are never put on hold because of an emergency, including the outbreak of a virus. Too many elected officials think otherwise, and we're having to deal with them one lawsuit at a time, same as we're taking on Governor Baker. Adam Kraut, director of legal strategy for the FPC, concurred. We are elated that Judge Woodlock has ordered an injunction against Governor Baker and others so that law-abiding individuals can once again purchase firearms and ammunition, Kraut said. The citizens of Massachusetts have been deprived of their right to acquire arms for defense of hearth and home for too long during a time where it is most critical. State and local governments cannot suspend the Constitution and its guarantee of fundamental human rights, FPC President Brandon Combs added. Individuals have a human right to acquire firearms and ammunition for self-defense, and the need for self-defense is especially important during uncertain times. This important victory means people in the Bay State can exercise their right to keep and bear arms. Jim Wallace, executive director of the Massachusetts Gun Owners Action League, which was not a plaintiff in the case but did submit an amicus brief along with the National Rifle Association, told MLN News via email, Goal is very pleased with the decision from Judge Woodlock. The judge's ruling is based on the fact that denying access to retailers is, in part, a violation of the Second Amendment. He actually stated at one point that we don't give up our rights just because there's an emergency, Wallace noted. That's pretty doggone good. And I'm not going to go too much farther in this. Let's see. Part of the judge's written order says gun shops in other states have remained. Oh, that's a comment by Alan Gottlieb. Gun shops in other states remained open. Gottlieb said, and those stores have come up with creative strategies to serve the public without endangering anyone. We're confident Massachusetts retailers will be equally ingenious in their compliance with social distancing and sanitation requirements. And I'm not going to go through all the rest of this. So there you have it. In Massachusetts, no more closure of gun shops.
While you were on good news,
sure, go ahead.
I also just got dinged here that what's pretty bad is when your own counsel and your own lawmakers have to file a suit against you because of your communist actions.
Yeah.
But it seems that the lawmakers have filed the lawsuit against Whitmer for her overreach and communist overreach of power.
Good.
That has been done today, officially.
Good. About time.
Yep.
Open your state.
Agreed.
Lady.
Yeah, they passed a resolution saying that she couldn't do what she did. She ignored the resolution, so now they're taking it to the courts.
Good. Well, that's why we have 3 co-equal branches of government now, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the way it's supposed to work.
Speaking of the way it's supposed to work, this will be good news for you, Kingpin. From the NRA ILA from Thursday, May 7, 2020, Maryland. Governor Hogan vetoes ban on private transfers of long guns. Today, Governor Larry Hogan issued a veto on Senate Bill 208 and House Bill 4. Governor Hogan knows that restricting law-abiding citizens will do nothing to stop criminals. In his statement on the veto, he reaffirmed his priority to hold violent criminals accountable for their actions. These bills would have banned the sale or transfer of long guns between private individuals without first paying fees and obtaining government permission. Firearm transfers such as loans and gifts between friends, neighbors, or fellow hunters would not have been exempted. Research shows such proposals have no impact on violent crime, and Governor Hogan is to be commended for refusing to recognize the false claims pushed by anti-gun advocates on this legislation. Your NRA would like to thank Governor Hogan for protecting the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding Marylanders. Awesome. There's at least one politician in Maryland who doesn't have his head completely up his... Yeah, you get the picture.
Yeah, I was about to say, you mean Hogan actually pulled his head out of his ass long enough to do one thing right?
Yeah, apparently. Seven Wonder says, Hogan? Coincidence? Now, if it had been Schultz, that would have been, you know.
I was going to say, it depends. Which Hogan are we talking about there, Seven? Colonel Hogan or Hulk Hogan?
Yep. It seems that everywhere we have politicians who just dredge the depths of humanity to try to figure out the most idiotic course of action to take. You know, stupidity's everywhere, folks. And speaking of which...
And now prepare yourself for another tale of stupidity in this episode of Moron of the Week.
Our first contestant in Moron of the Week is this opinion contributor called Michelle Norris for this piece in the Washington Post, which was published on May 6th, 2020. It's titled, "We Cannot Allow the Normalization of Firearms at Protests to Continue." This we know. Black or brown people gathering in the streets or at the State House with rifles and body armor would not be tolerated. So we really don't even have to go any further with this, do we, folks? We know right where she's going with this. She's already, played the race card in the first sentence of the piece. But
yeah, that woman is a real piece of work. I was reading a story about this and saw a video on her earlier. Yeah.
To be fair, so that we're not headline surfers, as I was just ranting against earlier, let's go ahead and dig deeper into the article, shall we? They would not be allowed to yell in the face of police officers. They would not be referred to as very good people by a sitting president. There would be no debate about First or Second Amendment rights. There would be arrests. Lots of them. Let's just admit that. No, we don't have to admit anything, lady, because there's nothing to admit. I'm not going to accept the bullshit you're trying to shovel down my throat, though. And let's admit this, too. We've gotten far too accustomed to the image of white protesters carrying paramilitary-level firearms in public spaces. The presence of guns, often really large guns, they must be scary, at protests has become alarmingly normalized. It is time to take stock of what that means. That guns are normal. Accepting and even expecting to see firearms at protest rallies means that we can somehow embrace the threat of chaos and violence. While those who carry say they have no intention of using their weapons, the firepower alone creates a wordless threat and something far more calamitous if even just one person discharges a round. Yet, every protest that I've been to where people have been open carrying has been the most peaceful and awesome look how many people showed up in Richmond. The vast majority of them armed. How much blood was spilled? Oh, wait, not one single drop. As a matter of fact, the only people who got froggy were leftists.
Yep.
If someone were to go rogue, it would be difficult for police to identify a shooter while facing a phalanx of protesters who all have rifles strapped to their shoulders. Distinguishing law enforcement from people dressed as enforcers could be tough. During the August 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, the Virginia National Guard tweeted that its troops were wearing MP patches on their uniforms so people could sort the military police from the rifle-wielding paramilitary groups that showed up wearing helmets, camouflage, and tactical vests. Accepting the open display of firearms at protests means that we can expect an increased militarization of state and local law enforcement agencies seeking to protect their troops. Accepting the open display of firearms at rallies means that we must also admit this confirms a significant cultural shift that collides with norms and current laws. The protesters that stormed the State House in Michigan were within their right to carry guns inside the state capitol under open carry laws, but their actions were far outside of the comfort zone for many people who work in that building and who dedicate their lives to finding civil solutions to disagreements. Well, boo frickin' who? I don't care about your comfort. Your comfort doesn't detail what my rights are. I'm sorry to tell you, lady. Michigan Senate Majority Leader Mike Shirkey is a Republican and Second Amendment champion who initially supported challenges to the state's shutdown order. But in a statement last week, he condemned the use of intimidation and the threat of physical harm to stir up fear and feed rancor. There are now discussions about reviewing the laws that allow citizens to carry and display guns inside the Michigan State House. Almost every state has legal tools to crack down on armed militias under laws that prevent the formation of private paramilitaries that are not answerable to civil authorities. Because, again, it goes back to the monopoly of force. Such groups cannot falsely assume police or military roles and are not allowed to provide military training to prepare members for civil disorders. But when heavily armed protesters show up in formation at rallies, they certainly flout these laws. Is this brazen display of force about the right to own firearms or the right to make armed threats for political purposes? Just asking, because the latter is not a right that can be equally asserted. The protests are purportedly about reopening America. A parallel goal is realignment, using the Second Amendment to conduct regular and routine shows of force to intimidate elected officials into enacting a political agenda. Accepting the display of firearms at protests by some and not others means that we must also accept that some are rewarded with a kind of special citizenship that allows them to be seen as patriotic instead of threatening and aggrieved instead of aggressive. If we accept this as normal, it means the country collectively is shrugging its shoulders and co-signing a skewed social contract in which white nationalist groups grow in size and influence as threats against politicians and journalists escalate and gun violence and mass shootings continue to rise. Accepting this increasingly brazen display of guns as normal means an armed political movement is flourishing outside the guardrails of our political system. This didn't happen overnight. Advocates for open carry have been carrying handguns and rifles to department stores, Starbucks, and state capitals since 2013 in an effort to normalize firearms in public. Well, yeah, because they should be normal. The movement is coincidentally aligned with the entertainment trend in which paramilitary forces take center stage in popular video games and TV shows such as HBO's Watchmen and Showtime's Homeland. Polls show that most Americans prefer a go-slow approach to reopening most businesses. The armed protesters in places such as Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, and North Carolina represent a tiny minority. Some surveys put the most insistent Open Now crowd at less than 10%, but the weapons make the influence seem larger. And they know that. We see protests punctuated by guns almost every day. It has become routine. We have normalized something that should be shocking. In my opinion, this piece is nothing more than a transparent attempt to paint, and she revealed her play right from the outset, to paint people who would stand up for their rights as evil, to paint people who would stand up for their rights as white nationalists, to paint people who would stand up for their rights as racists, fascists, Nazis, the whole bullshit tactics that we've heard time and again over the last few years from the left, from their Antifa garbage lackeys.
And she only sees...
This is straight out of Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, where you demonize, polarize, and fix the opposition so that they're too busy defending themselves from your attack to do anything effective.
Yeah, and she only sees, as she puts it, people of color when it supports her political views. she brings up the Richmond thing. There were black people and Hispanic people in the crowd that were almost ignored by the media. I mean, I've told the story before where I saw one reporter giving a report and the cameraman panned, and as the guy said, the reporter had said, it's a bunch of white nationalists, the cameraman panned and there was like 3 or 4 black guys standing there holding up pro-gun signs, right?
Yeah.
And in the Michigan thing, in the one video clip I saw on Fox News, there were black people at the protest about getting the state open back up. So obviously this woman is colorblind only when it supports her political view.
Well, they're Uncle Tom's and they don't count.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's in that same breath that one Democrat congresswoman was uneasy about walking through the crowd of people, and what happened? 2 armed civilians escorted her through the crowd into the building.
Yep.
And right to her office.
Yep.
Have a nice day. Take care. And out they went. This crap that they're trying to feed here.
Go ahead, finish.
They released the 2019 mass shooting report. I just got that the other day. And her crap that she's spewing there, well, mass shootings went up, blah, 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 blah. No, actually they haven't. Mass shootings are actually deaths for mass shootings are exactly the same as they were last year.
Yep. Jefferson Martial Arts out in the chat says, where is it?
The only ones that suffer
as a black man, the first line has me pissed. And it should. Because, even at this late a date, even in the 21st century, racism does exist. I'm not going to say that it doesn't. When people claim everything is racism, it detracts from the cases that actually are. It makes everybody else want to go, yeah, bullshit. Right. Just like this, and the other thing was racist. And it gets, it's the boy who cried wolf parable all over again. That should piss you off. I think that the black community would serve itself a whole lot better to police this kind of garbage from within, and set the standard that, if it is racism, claim it. If don't shy away from pointing it out when it happens. But don't try to make something racism that isn't, because it detracts from the message. It's my opinion, though. And we know what they say about those. So, this Washington Post writer, she is our first contestant on Moron of the Week this week. But wait, there's more. We're going to actually go outside the U.S. for this one. This is the first time I'm doing it, but this was so egregiously ridiculous that I had to put this in here. From AmmoLand from May 8th, 2020 by Dean Weingarten. Canadian cops take down Star Wars stormtrooper for toy gun. On 4th of May, a small restaurant in Alberta, Canada, was using a person with a Star Wars stormtrooper costume as a promotion. The Cocoa Vanilla Galactic Cantina is located at 531 13th Street North in Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada. The promotion was on the unofficial Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. The police in Lethbridge decided to do their own interpretation of stormtroopers. The 19-year-old woman who was employed by the cantina as a draw was assaulted by the police at gunpoint for having the temerity to wear her stormtrooper costume with a plastic blaster. Most of the interaction was caught on video. The police completely overreact. They drew guns on the young woman in the Star Wars costume and order her to get down. This is difficult to do in a hard plastic costume, as she attempts to explain. The Canadian police will have none of it, even after the restaurant owner tries to tell them it's a promotion. There was no reason to require the woman to get down on the ground and be handcuffed after she puts down the toy gun. When the videographer comes up to video the incident, one of the police tells him to leave or he'll be arrested. He backs off but continues to video. Then a police officer in a police truck drives between him and the victim and blocks his recording angle. The Canadian police appear to be carrying SIG equipment. The long gun used by the officer confronting the stormtrooper looks like a SIG 551. The police firearm has a flash hider, short barrel, pistol grip, folding stock, and standard 30-round capacity magazines. How does the Canadian police find all those things useful when they are precisely the things Americans who want the public disarmed find abhorrent? The Lethbridge police use SIG P226 pistols and .40 caliber. The incident has drawn international attention. One commentator on the Lethbridge police Facebook page posted a clip of a Star Wars movie and made this comment: "You people are so pathetic and stupid. You humiliated our entire country, and you didn't even have the bells to apologize. You are simply the worst." Canadian police are considered to be more familiar with firearms than Australians. It made the news when Australian police took down a man walking on the beach with a 1/3 scale plastic toy rifle. The Australian incident happened a year ago. The Australians had the excuse of a law requiring replica guns to be registered the same as real guns, which is absolutely asinine. Perhaps that is anticipated in Canada. It is reasonable for the police to respond to a man with a gun complaint. Requiring a promotional actor to get on the ground to be handcuffed after they've been disarmed of a plastic toy and have been told it is a promotion seems beyond reason. So let's go ahead and let's watch this. This is a YouTube clip from the Full Throttle TV channel on YouTube.
I'm recording you.
Can you do a dance?
It starts
Can you
off
dance?
with someone,
What can you do?
a passerby,
Can you do your
recording
stormtrooper walk? Do the march.
stormtroopette with her blaster
do the
out
march.
there.
Oh, he's gonna shoot you.
I'm not
Is that
seeing the
the
video if you got a plane.
I know, that's why I'm narrating it for you. And he's asking her, hey, can you do a little dance? Can you do the stormtrooper walk, etc. Then they drive off and turn around and come back the other way. As he rocks out the background. Coming back the other way, they notice the police. Holding the poor chick and coming.
Stop. This Canadian police.
They've got their guns out. Her toy blaster's clearly on the ground. They keep ordering her to lay face down.
It's a plastic gun.
The restaurant owner's telling him it's plastic. And they're telling him to go back inside. She's screaming and crying.
Shit, that's a girl, man. Fuck. Yo, fuck this bitch. He's got the fucking shotguns. Why?
Closed area. Stay back. Let's go. Seriously.
This is Canada. We don't have guns in Canada.
Record us. Go record us, but don't come approaching us. Stay
No.
back there, like everybody else.
Okay, but this is
please.
Canada. That's not a gun. It's a plastic gun. I could
I
buy
don't
that at the
care.
dollar store.
You're gonna get arrested if you interfere here. Stay back.
Okay. Oh, so when? Oh, okay. This is the United States of America. Yeah, that's Donald Trump and his people. They're fucking cops.
Yeah, okay, so. Shit on America, guy. Whatever. Sir, drinking hoser. Yeah, there's the store owner standing there like, what the hell? Trying to tell these people that
Oh my god.
now the police truck drives in and blocks the view.
Taco Vanilla Galactic.
That's pretty
It's all
good.
hard, buddy.
So, yeah,
Okay, bye.
crazy, man. They do all this over what's obviously a restaurant promotion on May the 4th. Somebody dressed in a stormtrooper suit with a stormtrooper blaster walking outside a restaurant, but it's, full-on felony stop garbage here. So, yeah, Canadian Bacon, you guys get your spot on the as a contestant on Moron of the Week. So here we go, folks. We have the Washington Post writer, Canadian Bacon, and Joe Biden just for being Joe Biden, as always. So, Glimtech, who's the biggest moron this week?
Okay, now that I unmuted, that'll help. This is a tough one. But Canucks are Canucks, and they're morons to begin with, so that doesn't surprise me any. And it's a communist fascist country anyway, or at least going in that direction, so I'm not worried about that. The writer is just completely, totally ignorant, and that's normal for the leftist, communist, fascist writers. But Uncle Touchy, though, that one I think I'm gonna go with Uncle Touchy with his little escapades that are coming out more and more and more right now. So
yeah, but that's not
as,
Second Amendment related, which is why he hasn't gotten a spot other than his traditional spot.
Yeah, I know. Well, if I have to go with that, then I have to go with the writer.
Okay. So Washington Post writer. Rich.
Yep.
Uncle Touchy, Washington Post writer, or Canadian Bacon?
Yeah, I've been weighing the first two. I'm just putting Biden off to the side because I don't know if I want to call somebody who's possibly suffering from dementia a moron. But the other two, the writer, it's more of a political ideology with her. The cops acted completely and totally stupidly in that Canadian situation. I'm going to have to go with them.
Kingpin.
Jeez, this one's tough. Since Squib's not here, I'm going to go with Biden just for the Squibby vote.
Okay. All right, folks, this is where out there in the chat, there's 17 people watching. Let's go ahead and have some votes. Who is the moron of the week? Is it Uncle Touchy Joe Biden, just for being Joe Biden, the Washington Post writer for her asinine racist comments, or Canadian Bacon for their continuously ridiculous overreaction to the Star Wars blaster? You tell me. Sean Callahan pre-voted for Biden, so I'll go ahead and put that out there. Biden. I really need to get some theme music for this wait. I hate the delay that there is, between me asking for the votes and...
Yep. Yeah, those
Ozzy
delays.
Osbourne says Canadian Bacon. Congratulations, Vanessa. New York Outcast, Canadian Bacon. Vanessa says she just completed her master's in math in September 2017 at age 56. See, that makes you a dark sorceress to me, because math is black dire sorcery, in my opinion. So, I am now frightened of you. Seven Wonders says Washington Post writer. Gabe Stark says Canadians. Jefferson Martial Arts says Washington Post.
New York Outcast is CB, so I'm going to go Canadian Bacon, I would think.
Canadian Bacon, yep. Let's get some more votes in here. Right now we got 5 for Canadian Bacon, 3 for Washington Post writer, 2 for Joe Biden.
I don't know that anybody else is voting.
Doesn't seem like it. My vote's going to be cast for the Canadian Bacon, by the way. Because, that was just dumb. So I'm going to go ahead and call this one done. the Lethbridge PD, a.k.a. Canadian Bacon, you are the moron of the week for May 8th, 2020.
And there we had another tale of stupidity in this week's episode of Moron of the Week.
And now that leaves us with one last thing to do, and that's self-defense shoutouts. For those of you who are new to the show or who have never stuck around to the end, this is Roll Call 219's favorite segment, self-defense shoutouts. It is not where I'm reveling in the proposition that the bad guy won the room temperature challenge by taking a dirt nap. It's where I'm relishing in and reveling in the proposition that the good guy had the means, method, and opportunity to prevent the bad guy from making him do the same. Because, you know, good guy with a gun and all that, that's kind of how it's supposed to work, isn't it?
This happens to be one of my favorite sections too. So,
cool.
Since roll call isn't here, I'll take.
Illustrated every month from the NRA. The first thing I look at is the self-defense shootings that are listed in there.
I always did too. I always looked at the armed citizen part. Always.
Yep.
I look at the cover to see what gun they're going, and that's the first thing I go to, and everything else is just pretty much a waste.
Yep. This is from WHNT.com from May 4th, 2020. Harvest man killed in Sunday night domestic incident. Madison County Sheriff's Office investigating. Harvest, Alabama. A man was shot and killed in Harvest late Sunday night. The Madison County Sheriff's Office said deputies responded to a shooting call on Gibbon Drive at 11:50 p.m. after a woman called 911. Deputies said the woman told 911 she needed help after her ex-fiancé was present and had attacked her. At the home, deputies stated they found Jonathan Marquise Burrell, 31, dead from a gunshot wound. The sheriff's office stated that Burrell had a history of domestic violence abuse as well as violation of protection orders from abuse. The sheriff's office will present its findings to the Madison County District Attorney's Office, and the case will be handed over to a grand jury. So, I'm glad that he didn't have that she did unto him before he did unto her. Next up, from mlive.com, from April 29th, 2020. Man shot while attempting to burglarize Bay County home, police say. Bay City, Michigan. Police are investigating the shooting of a suspected burglar in Bay County. Now, what the hell was this guy doing outside of the house? He should have been home. Ain't Michigan shut down? Anyhow, about 1:45 a.m. on Wednesday, April 29th, Michigan State Police troopers and Bay County Sheriff's deputies responded to the shooting scene at a house in the 5100 block of Baxman Road in Monitor Township. They arrived to find a resident had shot a 26-year-old man in his abdomen, said MSP Special First Lieutenant David Kreitzer. Police determined the wounded man had entered the home through a window he had broken, Kaiser said. The wounded man was taken via ambulance to an area hospital where he remains in stable condition. The resident was not arrested or issued a citation, Kaiser said. Kaiser did not know if the burglar and resident knew each other prior to the incident. Additional details were not immediately available. Next up, from riverfronttimes.com by Doyle Murphy, April 30th, 2020. Would-be robber killed, accomplice wounded in South St. Louis, police say. Armed thieves were shot, one of them fatally, God dang it, come on, by a man they tried to rob on Wednesday night in South St. Louis, police say. Come on. Officers were called at 10:38 p.m. to the 5300 block of South Compton Avenue for reports of a shooting. When they arrived, they found one man, whom they're still trying to identify, dead on the ground. They then found his partner nearly 2 miles away in the 4200 block of Schiller Place, police say. He had been shot in the thigh. Police say the two men approached the 31-year-old, pulled out a gun, and tried to rob him. The would-be robbery victim, however, shot both men. The scene of the shooting is on the northern border of the Carondelet neighborhood. The wounded accomplice was taken from Schiller in the Bevo neighborhood to the hospital where he was treated and released. Police have not publicly identified him or the shooter. Case is still under investigation, and police asked anyone with information, yada yada, blah blah blah. So, good. Don't try to rob people and you won't get shot. Oh, there we go. This is from postandcourier.com by Sarah Scoello from May 1st, 2020, updated May 6th. North Charleston police won't charge 16-year-old girl with shooting stepdad in self-defense. And by the way, stepdad here almost made it as a moron contestant. North Charleston police said they're not planning to charge a 16-year-old girl with shooting her mother's husband after hearing she did so in self-defense. The teenager, whose name wasn't released due to her age, was on Remount Road with her mother and stepfather when he attacked the adult woman outside of a car, Deputy Chief Scott Deckard said. This is why he almost made it into the moron segment. The man passed his stepdaughter a handgun as she and her mother got into the vehicle, according to Deckard. When he grabbed a piece of concrete and hit the car with it, threatening to kill the pair, the girl shot him in the head and shoulder. He was taken to Trident Medical Center, according to the report, where he is recovering. She fled the scene, Deckard said, but officers caught up and took her into custody on Remus Street. She was charged for failure to stop for blue lights. So this brain trust hands the girl the gun and then later proceeds to threaten to kill her and start beating on the car with a piece of concrete. That's pretty damn dumb. That's why he almost made it in there. Yeah, you see what I mean?
Stupid.
Oh my God! Yeah. Here, I'm going to give you this gun. Please, by all means, when I start acting like an idiot, please by all means, please shoot me. The only thing we need to do is get her out and get her to some classes there and learn how to shoot, so she could actually, if she hit the guy in the head and in the shoulder, then
I know, right? If she were here in Ohio,
get her some more trigger time.
Yeah, I would comp that one for sure. So awesome. So there you have it, folks. Times where the good guys with the guns stop the bad guys with the gun or concrete. And that's the way it should be, despite what NPR, Moms Demand, Brady, Giffords, etc., EIEIO would have you believe.
Sean Callahan out on YouTube said suicide by stepdaughter.
Yeah, that's about it. That's about it. This may have been attempted suicide by stepdaughter, right? So let's go ahead and start rolling up the sidewalks and folding up the awnings, folks. I want to thank my illustrious and esteemed panel for stopping by. Glimtech, is there anything you'd like to leave us with? Any plugs you'd like to make? Anything at all you'd like to add as a parting shot?
Have a good night. Have a good week. Don't get corroded. And hopefully everybody gets out of lockdown soon. Take it easy. Thank you for the invite.
Absolutely. Rich, is there anything you would like to add to the discussion, sir?
Yeah, be sure to check out This Week Unloaded this Sunday. Start time between 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern. And since Kingpin, by the way, it's over on the Unloaded Media channel. And since Kingpin won't plug himself, go out and check out Kingpin stuff. He has some good stuff. He just released a video, I believe, yesterday. So go check out what Kingpin's got on his channel.
Absolutely. Speaking of Kingpin, what would you like to leave us with, sir?
Well, thank you very much for the invite. I appreciate it. Always good to keep intellectual conversation going, and you do a fantastic job. So I appreciate your show and being a small little part of it.
Thank you, sir. And you're not a small little part. My guests on the panel and my audience in the chat are integral parts of this show. You guys make it what it is. I just provide direction. You guys provide everything else. Speaking of you guys out there providing, as always, I am humbled and amazed that so many of you have chosen to spend this time with us here on a Friday night when you could be doing absolutely anything else. you know, you're here with us. Even if you were here for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever, or from start to finish, you're what drives this, folks. It's humbling and it's gratifying. As I said earlier, you know, this is a two-way street. It is very much a conversation, and I look forward to it every week. You know, in these dark and dangerous times, make sure that your Congress critters and elected representatives know what you think. Send them a snail mail, email, telephone, telegraph, carrier pigeon, smoke signals. Do anything that you have to do to let them know what you think. And never, ever, ever give up the fight. I'll see you guys on the next one.